Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my reaction of the top 25 for college basketball. I'm going to have to start shifting into new things, and I honestly think I'm probably going to revamp the channel a little bit to make it not so just based around college football, because the offseason kind of sucks ass for college football, at least for me. This is when the channel just dies, and I don't want it to die. So we're going to edge out to multiple different areas. I feel like the most obvious places to go from college football would have to be to basketball and to the NFL. So let's get straight into this. But before we do that, I just want to ask, it would mean so much if you guys could watch to the end of the video. I know it's a lot to ask, but man, we're entering the time period of death for this channel. I've been trying to hit that 4,000 watch hour mark, and it's a slow and bumpy ride, but it's been a year since I started making videos, and that means it's like it counts the 4,000 hours within the year. So now that I'm a year in, the videos that I started making a year ago, the watch hours for those are starting to disappear. So progress has completely halted. Also probably doesn't help at the lack of uploading that I have, but I'll promise you I'll promise to upload more if people can watch to the end of the videos and subscribe. I know it's asking for a lot, but I'm just going to put it in the beginning of my videos now just because it doesn't hurt to ask. But anyways, let's get straight into this. So starting at first place and absolutely deserving of it is Purdue. Purdue, they're a great team. So far, they've absolutely outlasted every single bit of competition they've played. They beat Gonzaga. They beat Tennessee. They beat Marquette. And their only loss is on the road in overtime to Northwestern. It doesn't look like the best loss ever. It actually looks like a pretty bad loss. But it is college basketball. And, I mean, that's my only real reasoning for losing like this. It's also a road game. I believe Northwestern also upset this team last year. So, yeah. Then they beat Alabama in a thriller. And most recently, they just beat U of A, who was ranked at number 1. Purdue's absolutely deserving of the number 1 spot. At number 2, we've got Kansas. I am a little sketched out by this Kansas team, by the amount of scraping by this team has done, except for their one loss. They got clobbered by Marquette. They lost by 14 points, but in their wins, they beat Kentucky. They beat Tennessee, which are 2 very good wins. They beat UConn, very good win, and that's it. But they have been struggling, like they struggled on the road against Indiana. Now, I know that's no easy game, but still struggling against a team that got pounded by Auburn. And overall, they're just struggling to put away the competition. So Kansas strikes me as a little bit of a sketchy little team right now. They've got a couple easy games up ahead. They do get to host TCU, but I can't wait for Oklahoma at Kansas. It's going to be a fun conference in the Big 12, but right now I'm a little sketched out by Kansas, but I still think they're deserving of the number 2 spot. However, I don't think Houston is deserving of the number 3 spot. I know this team is undefeated, but who have they played? Honestly, one of their most impressive wins has to be at Utah or against Texas A&M. But Texas A&M is now a 4-loss team, and Utah is still a 2-loss team. So those are their only 2 good wins. The rest are a bunch of nobodies. Houston's got nobody on their schedule, let alone they're scraping by. At Xavier, they win by 6. And Xavier's 4-4. They're split. Come on now. There was another game that was sketchy. I mean, Towson. They're only beating them by 16. I mean, I know 16 is quite the point gap, but still, it's Towson. Who are they? I don't know, man. Houston is sketching me out, and they still don't have to play anybody for a while. I mean, they scheduled nobodies for their non-conference. It's kind of wild. At number 4, we've got U of A. And I honestly think this team's ranked a little too high. I know they lost to the number one team in the country after being the number one team in the country. But their wins consist of a road win against a fraudulent Duke team, a win against a fraudulent Michigan State team, an annihilation of a I wouldn't say fraudulent Wisconsin team. I do think they're pretty good, but I still think they're a little sketchy. And then they finally play any form of competition, a top 10 team, like that should be a top 10 team. They play Purdue, and they lose by 8. In a game, it really wasn't very close. I mean, going into halftime, Purdue's up 49-38. And, U of A only outscored them by 3 in the second half, both teams scoring in the 40. Purdue owned this. They owned this, man. It was their match from, start to finish. U of A gets to play Alabama next or on Wednesday, and then they're on the road, or I guess not on the road. It's Desert Holiday Classic, which takes place in Las Vegas, so practically a home game for U of A. They play FAU, who I'm a little sketched out about. Then they've got 2 easy games. The Pac-12 is horrendous, so the schedule will be easy for U of A. This team should finish off a 1 seed this year, and if they don't, that's disappointing. But U of A, they kind of lucked out with the teams they picked not being so good. Obviously you pick number 2 Duke as a matchup you want to play because they're number 2. They're now a 3-loss team sitting at number 21. Michigan State started off at number 4. They're not even ranked anymore. U of A kind of lucked out, and honestly, I don't think they're actually the best team ever. Number 5, we've got UConn. I'd like to raise this team because this team has actually played some impressive opponents. They handed Texas their first loss in quite the matter. They beat them by 10. Then they lose by 4 points to Kansas, which wasn't my most favorite look at the time. I was hoping that UConn would win that, although I think it was at Kansas. But then they beat an overranked North Carolina team, but nonetheless, they still kicked the crap out of them. And then they kicked the crap out of a overranked Gonzaga team. So, yes, they're kind of fitting in the same boat as U of A, but the main thing for me is that their loss it was a very close, tough road game. The thing about the Purdue U of A game, it was a invitational, I believe, and this one. Yeah, this was in Kansas's home stadium. Good luck winning in Kansas's home stadium, and they only lost by 4. I think UConn's pretty good. Again, they're really good at basketball, man. Going into last year, I actually had no idea that UConn was a basketball school. So it kind of caught me off guard, mic noise incoming, when they were actually hella good. But anyways, moving on. Marquette. Marquette is a sketchy, weird little team because they beat Illinois, which is an impressive win. Illinois is number 13. Pretty good win. They beat them by 7. Beat UCLA by 2 points. We'll get to UCLA later, though. Or we'll get to UCLA after this. Then they kick the crap out of Kansas in the Maui Invitational by 14 points. Was this Kansas's fault, though? Let me go ahead and open up the box score. It looks like Kansas shot 40%. Marquette shot 45%. Both teams made 6 3-pointers. It just looks like Marquette played better. And then they lose by 3 points to Purdue, almost handing Purdue their first loss of the year, but just falling short. This Marquette team, it looks like a really good basketball team, and then they get swamped at Wisconsin. They just get swamped, which doesn't look good at all anymore. Somewhat. We'll get to it. We'll get to Wisconsin later. And then they hand Texas their second loss, I believe, of the year. Yeah, their second loss. And Texas is a pretty good team. So Marquette, definitely deserving. Again, I'd probably raise them up. I know it's a lot to drop these Houston and U of A, but what I would probably do is put UConn at 3, Marquette at 4, U of A at 5, Houston at 6, But now we get on to Oklahoma, who I think is probably the most fraudulent of these teams up here. They are undefeated. Don't get me wrong. They are undefeated, but they have a 2-point win against USC. 2-point win against USC is not good. And they still haven't really played anybody. They struggled against Arkansas. I mean, really, sorry, I was like being robot there. My bad. They struggled against Arkansas nonetheless. Arkansas had every opportunity in the first half to put up points, and they just didn't. They got outscored 25-37. In the second half of basketball, Arkansas scored 45 points versus Oklahoma's 42. So still, Oklahoma put up the points, but in the end, Arkansas plays better in the first half. Arkansas wins this game. Arkansas has the ability to play better. They're just doing what they did last year, and they're just being shit. That win against Arkansas at home, might I mention, at Oklahoma, was enough. I believe it was at Oklahoma at least. Was enough to put Oklahoma from number 19 to number 11, where they beat Green Bay by like 40 points, and that's enough to jump them up to number 7. The only reason this team is up this high is because they got gassed up by a USC win, and they're undefeated. So they're just going to skyrocket for a bit. And ironically, in the Jumpman Invitational, they get to play North Carolina. I think Oklahoma will beat North Carolina. So you could see a Oklahoma team in like the top 4, top 3 or something like that, even though I wouldn't necessarily say they are a top 4, top 3 team. I just don't think they are. Then after that game, they get 2 easy games. Then they host Oklahoma State. And then they're on the road at TCU. Tough game. On the road at Kansas. Tough game. They've got a lot of competition in the Big 12 this year. There's a lot of difficult teams out there. But I just don't necessarily think this Oklahoma team is worthy. They got a good schedule. They'll probably finish off like maybe like a 6-loss team this year, but they might lose early in March Madness. Tennessee at number 8. I'd put Tennessee over Oklahoma. Originally, I was calling this Tennessee team fraudulent. I can't even lie. I was speaking out of my ass in hate for Tennessee basketball. Last year, this team was pissing me off. This year, I didn't want to see them up here. But I've got to put aside my unreasonable unbias towards this team and recognize the facts. A 10-point win at Wisconsin. A big win against Syracuse in the Maui Invitational. Syracuse is actually pretty good. A 4-point loss to Tennessee, a 9-point loss to Kansas, an 8-point loss to North Carolina. So 3 losses in a row. An 8-point loss to North Carolina, 92-100. So North Carolina just absolutely laid the sledgehammer down and shot 43% from the 3-point line, hitting 12 of their 28 3-pointers. All right. Versus Tennessee's 55% field goal percentage and their 32% 3-point percentage. So North Carolina shot 46 field goal percentage. That's pretty good. But Tennessee shot 56, 10% more. But since North Carolina decided to drill every 3-pointer, RJ Davis and something Ingram both, made up the 3-point percentage. Seriously. You're not going to beat a team like that. This dude, Dalton Knecht for Tennessee, put up 37 points. Okay, buddy. Oh, my God. And he was 4 for 8 on the 3-pointers. He balled out. But anyways, let's just move on. That was a surprising one to see that final score. Sometimes high-scoring battles like that happen, especially with North Carolina. So they lose 3 in a row. Not a good look for Tennessee. They drop all the way down to number 17 before they beat Bad School, beat Illinois, beat Bad School, and then beat NC State, which isn't the worst. It's not. It was a pretty good team. And now they're back up in the top 10. I feel like this is completely deserving. Worst loss, definitely North Carolina. Best loss, definitely Purdue. Losing by 4 points to Purdue in a lower scoring game. I mean, Purdue puts up like 80 points, 85 points a game, and they held them to 71. So pretty impressive stuff there. I do think this Tennessee team is pretty good. And considering the SEC's not that good in basketball this year, they should have a pretty light schedule. So Tennessee could be a pretty high seed in the March Madness. Now, we've got Kentucky. Kentucky being ranked in the top 10, I feel like it's almost a sin. It's almost a sin. Starting off the year at number 16, winning to going down to 17 for whatever reason, losing by 5 to Kansas. Impressive, tough matchup. And they move up a spot after losing. That's respectable. Win in overtime to St. Joseph's and then beat Marshall. For winning in overtime to random school, they go up 4 spots. Where they lose to UNC Wilmington at Kentucky. Bad upset. Bad upset. Drop down only 4 spots to number 16 where they beat Penn. Move up 2 spots before they beat the fraudulent team being North Carolina in a CBS Sports Classic. Next week, they play their rivals, Louisville. We know Louisville's horse shit. And ultimately, Kentucky being ranked this high is ridiculous considering one of their only 2 losses. I know they're only a 2-loss team. One is to the number 2 team in the nation. The other one is to somebody who is probably, I didn't even know they were a college until they beat Kentucky. So, yeah, that's just not a good look. Baylor being number 10 is a little difficult. So, Baylor beats Auburn by 6 points to start the year. That's a good win in my books. Beat. They beat Oregon State. Oregon State's not good. Beat Florida by 4. I don't really know what the dealio with Florida is. Let's see what their record is currently. They're 7-3, so maybe they're not bad. But still, Baylor beats them in a basketball shootout. They win by 4, 95-91. Then they beat Northwestern State. Then they beat that team, and then they get killed at Michigan State. Now, this is the thing about some of these basketball teams that get ranked really high. Duke is also one of these potential teams. They get ranked in the top 10, top 5, and they lose 5 games. They get dropped. Nobody speaks about them for the rest of the year until they make it into the March Madness tournament after pulling off some unreal upsets. They make it into the March Madness tournament, and then they make a run. Maybe Michigan State is on the rise back. They are 50-50, guys. They lose to Duke. They lose to Duke. Oh, I'm sorry. I was missing something. Obviously, they lose the season opener at home in overtime to James Madison. They lose to Duke. They lose to U of A. And then they lose to Wisconsin. And then they lose to Nebraska. Most recently, they kicked the crap out of Baylor. This could mean 2 things. Michigan State is on the rise up. Baylor is overrated. Either way, I don't think I would necessarily take chances. I think we should drop Baylor a couple spots. However, if I would like to do what I please, I'd probably move Baylor up spots, moving Oklahoma down and Kentucky down and North Carolina down. But Baylor is still one of those teams that is a little questionable. But if you're Michigan State and you're shooting 63%, oh my God. If you're going to shoot 63% field goal, 66% 3 points, you're never going to lose a game. Somebody goes 4 for 4 on their 3-pointers, scoring 25 points. Another kid goes 2 for 3. Another kid goes 1 for 1. Another kid goes 1 for 3. Only shooting 12 3-pointers but hitting 8 of them, you're winning every game you play. You're just winning every single game you play. As well as your 31 for 49, which is 63% from just field goals. You're winning every game. If Michigan State balls out like that, like they really should be, they're a very good team. Baylor didn't have did they have the worst game? No, they shot 48%. I'd say the spot they kind of lacked in was the 3 points. They were 31%, but still 31% from the 3 is pretty good. They put up 64, not the best, But, I mean, they could have played better, but after all, it's a road game against a very desperately needing a win Michigan State team, as well as Michigan State fans are probably still in that stadium, and it's probably very difficult. I would like to praise Baylor. I would like to keep him up here, but I'm going to have to dock him a little bit of points. That's not a good one. Oh, boy. Finally, we get to North Carolina. Starting off at number 19 because they're a basketball school. You got to praise them. They drop down a spot. And then they go up 6 spots before losing in overtime to Villanova. Does anybody see Villanova in the top 25? No, please. Where is Villanova? I gotta assume they're receiving votes to be ranked. I'm being serious as well. Nope. They're actually not. They're not receiving votes anywhere. Wow. So yeah, that's a bad loss. They beat number 20 Arkansas. So you can only assume where the ranking got boosted. And then of course they got the so desperately needed win against Tennessee. And then they win by 8 points in a very, very close matchup where Florida State should have won. They win by 8 points. Florida State outscored North Carolina in this game 35-29 in the first half, and North Carolina did what they always do, and they managed to score 50 points in the second half, 49 to be exact. Why is that? I actually don't know. They shot like shit from everywhere. Couldn't even tell you. I don't even know. Their points kind of just spawned in, it looks like. Let's see. I don't know. Whatever. Let's keep moving. Then they lose. They get boosted up after the Tennessee win to number 9 before they get clobbered by UConn. Then they lose to their rivals, I guess basketball rivals, Kentucky. And now they sit at number 11. 2 losses to tough teams. Two losses to 2 tough teams. And they're still considered just outside of a top 10 team. So far, they've really shown they can't compete with the strength of these basketball teams. The only impressive win they have is against Tennessee. And, I mean, of course, we can go ahead and go back and show that North Carolina shot their brains out. I mean, they just threes. That's what they do. I don't know how else to explain it other than North Carolina's luck is going to run out. Sorry, North Carolina fans, if you feel like I'm just attacking your team. Just remember this is an opinion. But they do have a difficult, to say the least, schedule up ahead. They have to play at Pitt, which Pitt is 8-3. They have to play at Clemson. Clemson only lost by 2 to now ranked Memphis. They have to play at their rivals, North Carolina State. They have to play Syracuse, who is a 3-loss team as well. I don't know. Boston College is 8-3. I don't know who they've played. They lost to Colorado State. They lost to Loyola Chicago. So not looking too good. And they lost to NC State in overtime. So, and they have a win against St. John's. Maybe Boston College isn't that bad, but on the road at Boston College, on the road at Florida State is a difficult one. On the road at Georgia Tech, they play Duke, which obviously it's a rivalry. They get to host Clemson on the road at on the road at Miami, on the road at Syracuse, on the road at Virginia, host Miami, host North Carolina State, on the road, or host Notre Dame, on the road at Duke. It's a tough schedule for North Carolina. I can definitely see this team being somewhere like in a 10 or 11 loss team, I'm being honest. I mean, considering they've already picked up 3, their schedule doesn't loosen up anywhere beyond this. I don't think they're worthy of their spot. Creighton at number 12. Creighton needs to straighten TF up. Starting off the season ranked at number 8, winning 5 in a row, and staying completely put at number 8. Respectable because they didn't really play anybody. Before losing in a Hall of Fame Classic, they get their crap kicked in by Colorado State, losing by 21. They drop down to number 15 to beat the crap out of Oklahoma State, kick the crap out of Nebraska at Nebraska, beat Central Michigan before they lose to UNLV. But then most recently, they beat Alabama as a bounce back. UNLV, that loss was awful. I just don't get it. Creighton they need to stop. They play Villanova next. That would be a good win. But then they play at Marquette. And the schedule, of course, doesn't loosen up in the Big East. It doesn't get any easier as time goes on. They have to play teams like UConn, Marquette. I mean, even Xavier might be a little tough one. Providence is probably a tough one. Villanova was a little overranked, but still tough. Yeah, Providence will probably be good. Butler's 9-2, so maybe they're pretty good. But still, I mean, they've Creighton losing those two games. I get Colorado State's number 16, but UNLV, Creighton's got to straighten up. I say 12 is a perfect spot for them right now. Illinois, the Fighting Illini. This team started off the year at number 25. They took a 7-point loss to Marquette before they got, and then they got dropped from the rankings. They did then get placed back in the rankings, and they'd go to 24-20 before they'd beat the crap out of FAU 98-89. I mean, a 9-point win is not beating the crap, but still beat pretty good. Before they beat FAU, who is ranked at number 11 at the time, before they go on to lose to Tennessee, and most recently they beat Colgate. I respect this Illinois team. I think they are pretty good. Playing Marquette to 7 points is impressive. Tennessee is a good team. Losing to them, I don't blame you. It was also a road game. It was at Tennessee. And let's go ahead and see what Tennessee shot. They shot 45% again. Tennessee's a good team. They just make baskets. Don't blame Illinois for losing to that team. They will be good. FAU. This FAU team was preseason ranked number 10, which I thought was kind of whack, to say the least, considering this team was a fairy tale run going into the March Madness last year before they were barely snubbed of their their championship appearance by San Diego State, who probably shouldn't have made it. FAU gets placed at number 10 nonetheless before losing by 9 points at home to Bryant, dropping down to number 19 before winning against Butler, handing Butler one of their only 2 losses. They win by 5 in an invitational. Then they beat number 12 Texas A&M, which boosts their rank pretty good. Kick the crap out of Virginia Tech. Kick the crap out of Liberty. Kick the crap out of Charleston. Getting all the way back up to number 11 just to lose to Illinois, dropping down to 15. Win. They are now number 14, getting ready to play U of A. To be quite frankly honest, I think U of A might kick their teeth in and FAU might drop down to reality. I'm not sure this FAU team's actually any good. So far, it looks like they've struggled against majority of their competition, and their most impressive win is against Texas A&M, who is no longer ranked. So I think FAU's a little overrated right now. I kind of wish they would just start losing to the bad teams so they'd drop out. But, being number 14 is just going to give U of A the fattest rank boost we've ever seen. Moving on to Gonzaga, this team is a wacky one. So, mic noise incoming. Oh, that was a loud one. So, Gonzaga starts off the season ranked at number 11. They get invited to the Maui Invitational before losing by 10 points to Purdue. Beating Syracuse, pretty impressive. Beating UCLA by 4, another UCLA close game. Beating USC, who originally looked like a good team going into this year, was not. Beating AR Pine Bluff by 40 points before going on the road and losing to their rivals Washington. And then they beat Miss Valley State. And then they lose in a Continental Tire Seattle tip-off match. They lose by 13 to UConn. This Gonzaga team has shown not once but twice that they can't compete with the strong teams, being Purdue and UConn. I'm aware top 5 teams, but Gonzaga, I don't know. I mean, 15 is pretty low, so it's respectable, but the loss to Washington is not the best looking. I don't think Washington, it was like 15 years or like it was a big number since Washington won against Gonzaga, and that was just not impressive there. But anyways, let's move on to Colorado State. Colorado State started off the year, I mean, nobody really thought this team would be any good. They go 5-0 before kicking the crap out of Creighton, getting placed at number 20, and then beating Colorado by 5, and then beating Washington by 5, which brings them from number 20 to number 13 before they struggled to beat Denver, and then they lose to St. Mary's at Colorado State. So maybe Colorado State's going to return back to earth, or maybe these are just good teams. St. Mary's started off the year ranked at number 23. They lost to Weber State, lost to San Diego State, lost to Xavier, and lost to Utah. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to say they're not good. It looks like Colorado State was actually the one that brought themselves down. Yep, they shot 36% from the field goals. You're not going to win when you shoot like that. So that's a major reason. Moving on, BYU. This BYU team is so getting scammed right now. They start off the year unranked, beat some random school. Then they beat number 17, San Diego State, by 9 points. Then they beat some random school. Then they beat Morgan State. Then they kicked the crap out of ASU by 28 points. Then they beat NC State by 9 points? By 9 points. And then they finally... it took all that time to finally get ranked. Then they beat Fresno State good. They jump up to number 14 before they beat Evansville, but then they lose by 4 to their rivals Utah, dropping down to 18 before they beat Denver, before they beat Georgia State, and then that's where they bring us, is to number 17. BYU's only loss is a rivalry road game to Utah, who is currently receiving the fourth most highest votes to be ranked, and they're being placed at number 17. I'd probably could say with certainty BYU could skyrocket above Creighton, or above Baylor. Honestly, could probably say that, considering they're in one of the toughest conferences this year. This might not last, just because of the strength of their schedule. They have to play on the road at Baylor. They host Houston. They host Texas. They're on the road at Oklahoma. They host Baylor. They're on the road at Kansas State. They're on the road at Kansas. The schedule is very, very difficult for BYU, so they might sit in this range, even though, quite frankly, I think they're just better. Clemson, this team should have stayed undefeated, but they didn't. They start off the year winning 5. Barely, though. They struggled against UAB, winning by 1. They win against Davidson by 3. But then, they prevailed, so good for them. They beat Boise State. They beat Alcorn State. And then they kicked the crap out of Alabama, who Alabama at the time was not looking too good, but since has started to look better. Then they win on the road at Pitt. Then they beat their rival South Carolina, who at the time was a one-loss team. I don't know if that's changed. And then they beat TCU, handing them their only loss, which apparently a win against South Carolina and a win against TCU was enough to send them from 24 to 13 before losing by 2 to now ranked 2 loss Memphis. I don't know how the game ended, but it looks like Memphis, wow, what the heck? Memphis didn't even shoot better. Memphis was 15% from the three-point line versus Clemson's 30%, and Clemson shot more, so it must have came from free throws or something. Memphis, let's go ahead and look at the box score. I wanted to see how this ended, or the play-by-play, sorry. Let's go all the way to the end. Advertisements, go away. Oh, my goodness. Second. Why does it do that? Why does it separate the two? It's so dumb. It's a very, very back-and-forth matchup. There's never a time where the game was really getting out of hand. All the way down to the wire. Chase Hunter made free throw. Chase Hunter missed a free throw with 1 second left. So they fouled him. The dude missed, or the dude made a free throw, then he missed one on purpose, probably to try and get the ball back. So the game came down to the wire. It was a smart finish by Memphis. It is a great game, but Clemson's still a great team. I do think this team is a little underranked again for being a one-loss team and losing only one game to two-loss now ranked Memphis. It's a little harsh to keep them down at number 18, don't you think? Dropping them 5 spots, whereas teams like North Carolina can lose to the only competition they've played and drop down a whole whopping 2. Just saying. Texas up next. Texas is 2 losses. We don't even need to speak on how low this team is ranked. Texas lost to UConn. Texas lost to Marquette. They've beat every other team, and they sit at number 19. All right. Considering Marquette and UConn are number 5 and number 6, Texas should be ranked pretty high. I know it's going up against what I've been saying. They've lost to the only competition they've played. That is true. But still, considering they've lost to probably like the biggest dogs of this year. And yeah, it was handlings. I mean, they lost by a good 21 points to Marquette at Marquette, and they lost by 10 to UConn. The UConn game at least was a little bit closer, but at Marquette, they got beat up. I could probably put them above Creighton still. And that could all change. I still think, though, considering like their only 2 losses are against number 5 and number 6, even though they didn't compete in one, I still think this team can probably handle like all of these teams under. I would favor Texas in majority of these games, almost all of them. Probably not against BYU or Clemson, but finally getting on to the 20. We're almost done here. James Madison sits at number 20. This one is difficult because James Madison has the biggest win of the year, being on the road in overtime against Michigan State. But as we know, Michigan State's kind of fallen apart since then. So yes, they got ranked, but they haven't really been able to move up anywhere, considering their strength of schedule has been so weak, and the team they beat that got them ranked starts to look worse and worse every day. And considering the second game of the year, they won in double overtime against Kent State, and they beat Radford by 3. James Madison could be fraudulent. I don't think we should dock this team points, but I think maybe they should be like number 25 where Ole Miss is. Now we get on to Duke. Duke is just bad because this is an example where you could use they lost their only competition, but they also lost to bad teams. They lost at home to U of A. They beat a bad Michigan State team to boost their rank a little bit. They lose to Arkansas. They lose to Georgia Tech. So I'm sorry. They only lost one game, and they only lost one game to competition, and the other 2 were just bad teams that they straight up just lost to. Arkansas hasn't been playing good. Georgia Tech, I don't think they're that good. I mean, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Duke gets to host Baylor, of course. So that'll probably be a win for them, boosting their rank, but I don't like this Duke team. Virginia started off the year unranked, surprisingly, before they win by 3 points to Florida, and then they win all these games to finally get ranked in the top 25, where they lose to Wisconsin, and then they beat West Virginia by 2 points. Then they beat Syracuse by 22 points. So it's starting to look up for Virginia. They get placed back in the top 25 before winning by 2 points to Northeastern. So they're a really sketchy team. They've got to go. The burps. They've got to go play on the road at Memphis. So I'm going to call a loss. I'm going to call a loss on that. Virginia will probably get knocked out. They're really, really struggling. Now, finally, Memphis. This team got snubbed last year of their potential fairy tale run by FAU. I would have rather had Memphis in it than FAU, but whatever. FAU did something legendary anyways. But Memphis has, a win against Jackson State by like 17 points. Then they have a 25-point victory over Missouri on the road at Missouri. A big win against Alabama State. 4-point win against Michigan. 5-point win against Arkansas. And then a loss to Villanova. That's not a good loss, by 16 as well. Bad loss. 3-point loss to Ole Miss. I did not know that. All right, that changes everything. Good thing I saw that. 3-point loss at Ole Miss. Overtime win at VCU. 6-point win at Texas A&M. And then most recently a 2-point win against 13 Clemson. I think this Memphis team is pretty good. Losing to a top 25 team and losing to Villanova. I'd say the Villanova loss is probably the worst, but this is college basketball. Losses happen. So Memphis is pretty all right. Wisconsin starts out the year with a 10-point loss to Tennessee. Then they get a 13-point loss to Providence before they beat Virginia. They beat they beat Robert Morris. They beat Virginia. They beat SMU. They beat Western Illinois. Then they beat Marquette somehow. They beat Michigan State by 13 on the road before traveling to U of A and getting almost 100 dropped on them. Back down to earth. Somehow they don't move from that spot. They don't get dropped. And then they beat Jacksonville State most recently. I guess they moved down one spot. Wisconsin, I don't know, man. Considering they lost, Providence should be ranked instead of Wisconsin, considering Providence is a 2-loss team and literally handed this team a loss. But, of course, Wisconsin is just like leaning on that win against Marquette. Just absolutely leaning on it. I don't know if Wisconsin is that good. And finally, Ole Miss. Ole Miss, they really haven't played much is why I was going to go at them. But apparently they beat Memphis, so good for them. They have a 1-point win. They have a lot. Wow, holy. 10-point win against Alabama State. 9-point win against Eastern Washington. A point win against Detroit Mercy. A 3-point win against Sam Houston. A 1-point win on the road at Temple. A 20-point win against NC State. Big win there. A 3-point win against Memphis. An 11-point win against Mount St. Mary's, a 2-point win at UCF, and then a 10-point win against Cal. Still haven't really played anybody, just a very impressive win over Memphis. I feel like they kind of pulled that one out of their ass, considering Ole Miss's schedule looks like doo-doo balls. Yeah, it looks like they did, because Memphis went into the half up 37-30, and Ole Miss scored 50 points in the second half. So it looks like they shot 50% from the 3-point line. They were 11 for 22. So, yeah, go ahead and give them the game. Where Memphis shot 3 for 18, 16.7%. Give me a break. Ole Miss are frauds. I'm sticking with it. Teams that I would rather have ranked than this team, setting the phone down, finally getting ready to use the mouse. Teams that I would rather have ranked than this Ole Miss team would have to consist of Auburn, Colorado, or Utah. Maybe somewhere down the line, TCU or Providence. Wow. How in the world is Michigan State still receiving votes in A&M? I just don't understand. I can't rank Miami over Colorado, considering Colorado beat the crap out of them. That feels unfair. That's just dumb. Like, especially this early on in the year. I guess, yeah, that's pretty much the only people I'd rank. But yeah, I guess that's just my overall reaction of every team in the top 25. Let's go to see what I would place people at. I'd say Purdue number 1, Kansas number 2, UConn number 3, Marquette number 4, U of A number 5, Tennessee number 6, Oklahoma. Wait, no, I messed up. Purdue number 1, Kansas number 2, UConn number 3, Marquette number 4, U of A number 5, Houston number 6, Tennessee number 7, Oklahoma number 8, Baylor number 9, Kentucky number 10, Creighton number 11, Illinois number 12, North Carolina number 13, FAU number 14, BYU number 15, Colorado State number 16, Gonzaga number 17, Oh, it's too difficult to do that. You get the gist of it, though. I don't like certain teams. I do like certain teams. I'd probably put Texas somewhere around here. BYU definitely probably somewhere up there. Probably drop North Carolina and Kentucky down a bit. Definitely drop Oklahoma down a bit. Um, but yeah, that's just I don't know, man. It's a mess. It's hard to do this. I wish I could just kind of drag and place stuff. That'd be nice. But that's just my reaction of the top 25. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys watched to the end of the video. If that's the case, if you did watch to the end of the video, type basketball. Just type basketball in the comments as a singular comment. If you have something to say, just comment it separately. But yeah, a like and subscribe would help. A comment always helps, and that's all for me. Adios.